You see these people. They soar to these unimaginable heights, with fortunes so big they could literally reshape countries. We kind of look at them like they're modern gods, totally invincible. But what happens when their wings just melt? When that incredible climb up ends in a free fall all the way back down to Earth?
I mean, that's the big question, right? It almost sounds like a myth. How does it happen? Is it just one terrible decision? A fatal flaw in their character? Or maybe it's challenging a power that's even bigger than all their money. Okay, let's really get into this and see what we can find out.
So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at 4 modern-day Icarus stories. We've got the fraudulent visionary, the prideful guy who broke a world record for losing money, the tycoon who took on the state, and the paranoid pioneer. We're going to break down their falls, and then we'll unpack what it all means.
All right, first up, we've got a story that honestly reads like a thriller. This is a fall that wasn't about a bad bet in the market. Nope. This was built on a foundation of pure, straight-up deception.
So, you gotta picture this. Elizabeth Holmes was the absolute darling of Silicon Valley. Her company, Theranos, was supposed to change the world. The promise? Running hundreds of blood tests from a single tiny drop of blood. I mean, the media went crazy for her. She was on every magazine cover. They were calling her the next Steve Jobs.
And at her absolute peak, she was personally worth a mind-blowing $4.5 billion. And that number, it wasn't just money. It was belief. It was the world believing she was a genius who was about to revolutionize medicine. And then, just 1 year later, poof, it was all gone. A few investigative journalists started digging, and it turned out the technology, it just didn't work. The whole thing was a massive fraud. Forbes took another look and revised her net worth down to 0, a complete and total wipeout.
But here's the thing. Her fall didn't just stop at 0. Today, she's not a CEO. She's not an entrepreneur. She is inmate number 24965-111. She's currently serving an 11.25-year sentence in federal prison for conspiracy and wire fraud. From billionaire status to just a number in the system. Wow.
Okay, so we went from a fall built on lies to one built on something totally different. Pure, unfiltered hubris. This is the wild story of how the richest man in the world set a world record he absolutely never wanted.
Just a few years back, Elon Musk was literally on top of the world. He's the guy behind Tesla and SpaceX, and his fortune had just exploded to over $200 billion. He was, without a doubt, the richest person on Earth.
And then the fall happened. And the scale of it is it's hard to even comprehend. Guinness World Records actually confirmed it. Elon Musk officially smashed the record for the largest loss of personal fortune in history. We're talking a loss of around $200 billion. To give you some perspective, that just completely dwarfs the previous record holder from the dot-com bust. It's not even close.
So you gotta ask, how on earth did that happen? Well, a lot of analysts point to what they call the hubris hypothesis. Basically, the idea that when you're super successful, that pride and overconfidence can lead to really destructive decisions. And for Musk, that decision was the chaotic $44 billion buyout of Twitter. The fallout from that, plus a huge 65% drop in Tesla's stock price in 2022, just vaporized a historic amount of his wealth.
Our third story. This one shows a completely different kind of limit. It's all about what happens when a private fortune, no matter how huge it is, runs headfirst into the absolute power of a government.
Right here, this is the moment. This was the spark that lit the whole fire. On October 24th, 2020, Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba, richest man in China at the time, gets up and gives this very fiery speech. He goes public and just rips into the country's financial regulators, calling the state-owned banks nothing more than pawn shops.
The government's reaction was fast, and it was brutal. Just days after he said that, regulators slammed the brakes on the gigantic $37 billion IPO for his company, Ant Group. Then, they launched an anti-monopoly investigation into his other company, Alibaba. And then, he just vanished. Jack Ma, one of the most famous people in China, gone. He disappeared from public view for months.
His fall was this incredibly stark reminder. It proved that in some places, there are lines you just do not cross. He went from being this celebrated hero of Chinese business to a walking cautionary tale. No amount of money in the world can protect you if you openly challenge the state.
Okay, our final story is easily the darkest. It's a total spiral from a celebrated tech pioneer all the way down to an international fugitive. And it ends in tragedy.
You know the name McAfee antivirus, right? Well, John McAfee is the guy who created it, the world's very first commercial antivirus software. A true pioneer. But his later life was, well, it was just a chaotic mess of legal problems. He got indicted in the US for tax evasion, he went on the run, and he was finally caught and arrested in Spain in October 2020. The end came in June 2021. Just hours after a court said he could be extradited to the US, he was found dead in his cell.
I mean, just think about that journey for a second. His name was on a piece of software that was sold to Intel for over $7 billion. And he ended his life in a prison cell, a man just completely consumed by his own paranoia and defiance. It was a total, tragic unraveling.
Whew, okay, so we've just walked through 4 pretty intense falls from grace. So let's pull back for a minute and ask, what are the big lessons here? Where do these stories really teach us?
You know, when you lay it all out like this, you see 4 really different roads to ruin. For Holmes, it was just an old-fashioned crime, deception. The result? Federal prison. For Musk, it wasn't a crime, it was a character flaw, hubris. The result? A historic loss of money. For Ma, it was a huge miscalculation of power, defiance against the state, which led to a swift crackdown. And for McAfee, it was just a total personal descent into paranoia and crime, with the most final consequence of all.
So why should any of us care? I mean, these are extreme examples, but they teach us some really basic truths. First, that having a ton of money does not make you invincible. It proves that personal flaws, like pride or paranoia, they don't just go away with money. If anything, they get magnified by it. And these stories are a huge reminder that some forces, whether it's the rule of law or the power of a government, are still absolute.
And that kind of brings us to one last big question. We tend to think of extreme wealth as being the ultimate shield, right? But after hearing these stories, you really have to wonder, is it actually a shield? Or does it just let you fly higher, closer to the sun, and raise the stakes for an even more spectacular fall?